Is it true that you have a kid?
Yes.
How did becoming a parent, I don't know how old your child is, but I have two kids as well.
Great.
But how did becoming a parent change your life and your worldview, especially regarding what it is specifically that you do?
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, I don't think I'm a totally different person because of this. I do think I'm the same person, but I do feel fulfilled in a way that I wasn't before. And I know this is kind of a strange thing to say, but I am not afraid to die because I know that there's someone out there who could live for me, in the sense that I'm not a dead end. That even if I die, that it will keep going, and so it's in a way been inspiring me to do more. I don't. Of course, there are people who are single and they're inveterate bachelors, whatever. That's perfectly fine. But I don't think that an ultimately fulfilling life can be had without reproducing yourself. And I think particularly for my movement, I mean, our movement is fundamentally about family. It's an extended family, but it's also about your personal family. And I do have a certain, you could say I have a certain antipathy, but I also have a certain sympathy for the dead-end hipster. I understand where they're coming from, and I understand how it's easier to live your life that way. But there is something ultimately nihilistic about living for yourself and living only for yourself, and we will often articulate this in terms of delayed adolescence, people in their 40s who kind of act like they're in their 20s, but there's something deeply sad about that. There are a lot of, when I was in New York City, I remember seeing lots of beautiful women and beautiful, not just the models and something, but a lot of very beautiful, well put together, well educated women who had great jobs and so on. And they were in Manhattan, but Manhattan does become a kind of a barren place for them, and they wake up and they're 45 and they're living alone with cats. And that job at the PR agency for $100,000 a year just ultimately seems meaningless. And so, yeah, I think it has changed me again, in the sense that I felt fulfilled on a deeper level. I do love my daughter more than my own life, more than anyone else. And it is joyful to be around young people. But also in that kind of funny sense, you're not afraid to die anymore. You realize that you'll go on.
How old is your daughter?
She's around 2.25.
Do you think you're a good dad?
Well, I'm the world's greatest dad. Is that? No, I hope so. I hope so. She definitely loves me, loves to see me. So I've done something right.
How often do you get to see your daughter? Like,
all the time. Yeah. I mean, I was just actually with her for a month, and I ultimately, my wife and daughter will move out to Virginia as well. But just for a couple of different reasons, we're kind of playing both places, which is making this whole move kind of a nightmare, to be honest.
Are you afraid in some way that, like, now with this newfound celebrity and you're being a target, are you afraid of what may happen to you with your daughter in public, or can you talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know how I'm going to handle it, to be honest. I'm definitely not the kind of person who would inculcate, an ideology into a child. I think obviously you're always going to communicate your values, like, just inherently by who you are and what you do and so on. But I don't want my children to follow in my footsteps, at least until they, are their own person. When they're adults, they could do whatever they want. But Yeah, I am worried as well about being isolated in school or so on. I worry about her learning about me. There's obviously so much shit, said about me of, having this strange impression. I when I was a kid, I didn't Google my parents, something like that. Even if that were possible, I wouldn't have found much of anything.
Does this work support a family?
It can, but it's very, very difficult. And I'm able to do. I have certain advantages. I'm able to do other things as well. But it is possible to make this happen. But we aren't rolling in dough in any way even approaching so much of the left. There is no George Soros of the alt-right. There are some George Soroses of the conservative movement. There's actually a handful of them. Rebecca Mercer is the one. She's become most famous right now. But there's the Koch brothers who I think I joked on Twitter, is there a single libertarian in Washington who isn't employed by the Koch brothers? And it's a joke, but I'm actually kind of curious if that's the case.
I doubt it. I mean, there's Peter Thiel, who's not employed by Washington.
He's not, but Peter Thiel is not funding the alt-right. At least I'm not being funded by Peter Thiel. I don't know of anyone who else is. So Peter Thiel's kind of out there as a specter of the great alt-right funder, but whether he'll actually do it is dubious. Peter Singer, I believe is his name, is another big conservative donor. I mean, there are a lot of these billionaires. There's no billionaire of the alt-right, and yet, but there will be.